Welcome to those of you joining us for this webinar on pit-to-port asset visibility, driving uptime and cost control in mining. My name is William Clark and I'm the Deputy Editor of the Mining Journal. I'm joined by Benjamin Brousseau, Senior Consultant for Enterprise Asset Management Implementation at Verisoft. Benjamin supports global companies in addressing asset management challenges, maximizing the potential of automation. Today we'll be talking about the visibility gap in mining maintenance, and we'll look at how leading mining companies are solving this with a unified enterprise asset management approach.
Thank you, William. So like you said, I'm Ben Brousseau. I've been working in the enterprise asset management world for 8 years now. Yeah, I've specialized heavily into resource extraction. So not only mining, but also lumber. Yeah. And I've also dabbled with manufacturing and fleet management. Yeah. I have also done some research on digital transformation, focusing on user adoption. So that's also going to be a big theme for today's webinar. Of course, if anyone here has some questions or interests, okay, there's a QR code that links straight to my calendar and my marketing team. So you can scan that and then we can plan some time later on. So if we take a look at what's ahead today, we'll try to keep things very practical. Okay, it's not going to be a never-ending slide deck. We'll start, however, we'll still talk about some of the context in mining, especially into mining operation and visibility gaps. Okay? Then we'll take a little bit of a look at the theory. So how can we connect assets, work sites, ultimately yielding into real results? Okay? Then a big chunk of today's webinar will be on the real thing. Okay, so looking at our solution in action, having a look at some automated workflows, some cost visibility, and then we'll finish things up with what's our starting point. Okay, so where to start and what to measure. We'll have a dedicated section for some Q&A. So we'll kick things off here with really the problematic that we see in complex mining operation, which is, we have different pieces of the puzzle. Okay. A lot of people on today's webinar, I feel, will be able to relate with that, where they have different system, different process, and often different stakeholders across the whole value chain. Okay. Whether it's extraction, transport, processing, distribution. Okay. But ultimately, sponsors and investors don't really care about the complexity behind that. What they want is really unified visibility across all of those segments. Okay. And here I kind of like this little image here that we have is, can you really see what's happening across all of your operation? And we see a crew here that's underground. Okay. So we'll try to take a look at how we can solve that today. So often when we talk about lack of visibility, okay, we really see two gaps. Okay? Uh, on the left side here, we really have an operational gap, and on the right side, we have a financial gap. Okay? If we start with operation, okay, um, types of questions or types of symptoms of lack of visibility would be such common. What is the status of an asset or an equipment? Out of our bucket loader, what's the percentage of our fleet that it is in the downline, let's say? What's at risk? Okay. Often systems are able to answer the first question, but not really being a little bit more proactive. And what does it mean on our operation, on our extraction capability, on our distribution capacity? Okay? And then if you really, go under the hood, ultimately you're asking yourselves, are work orders really completed? Are they completed on time? Are they only marked as completed? Okay? So once again, this would be more on the operation side of things. Now, it's possible that you have a very sophisticated enterprise asset management system, which would essentially prevent all of that. Great, but it's really rare that I see organizations that are able to fulfill both operation and financial requirement. So what are our financial requirements? Well, you know, I work with a lot of accountants, and often I get this ask, what are we spending? How much is this costing us? Right? And it's not only just the purchase order that you're approving. It could be what's our man hour, what's our opportunity cost, what are our acquisition cost. So over time, are you able to answer such questions? Should we keep maintaining this asset, trying to extend the life cycle, or are we better off replacing it completely? Okay. It also comes down with inventory. Okay? Are we replacing our inventory often? Do we have enough safety stock? Okay? And ultimately, where is the inventory tied up? This brings me really to my root cause, okay, which it's really rare to find both. Okay, systems often don't connect the field teams, okay, the people that are actually responsible for filling out work orders, maintaining the assets, okay, and they don't connect to the back office, okay, our controllers, our maintenance planners, our engineers. And really behind that root cause, okay, is that complex systems don't get used. Okay? I was saying in my introduction, I've done a lot of research on system adoption, and adoption is the biggest factor when it comes to return on investment behind digital transformation. Okay? So you could pay for the best system with the best features. If no one uses it, you're not you're not really gaining anything out of it. Okay? So what we see often, especially in mining, because it's a very asset intensive industry. There's lots of budget for digital transformation. So we often go with what I would call heavyweight EAM ERP system. Now, what do all those six letters mean? Okay, is that we're often going with a tier one solution that tries to do it all. Okay? Tries to be a best of breed into asset management, think work order management, preventive maintenance, but also finance, procurement. And fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with those systems. Okay? They can work, but at their core, they've really been designed for um, maintenance planners, controllers, consultants that are have the mandate to implement those systems, and really the technician in the field that we're expecting them to maximize their wrench time, but also get all of the data that the business need. They were really the last one, okay, in mind when designing and implementing those heavyweight systems. Okay? So some key failures that we can see here, or some symptoms out of that, would be work orders are late, are missing. Often the maintenance gets done, but we're not really tracking the data because we can't find the work order in the system. We don't have access to the work order. We're lacking training on it. Okay? What this means is that our asset history breaks down. Okay. The next time I'm going to do on a work order, well, I'll be navigating blindly. Okay. I won't know what's the last work order we've done on this asset. And ultimately, our cost data becomes unreliable, and then this leads to a complete breakdown, okay, in our work order process. So let's say parts demand shows a plate because we've never consumed the parts in the first place. So I'm sure some of you today can really relate to some of the failures that I'm presenting. Okay? If that's the case, at the end of the presentation, I'll bring up my QR code again. So please scan it and we can discuss together. So, what's the solution to that? I think we've been talking about problems for the past few minutes, so not so optimistic in terms of tone, and that's let's change this up. Okay? So, really, what we want here is in one system, we want our operational visibility. Okay, so we can have asset structure and life cycle, which, funny enough, is what the heavyweight ERP system does very great. Okay. But where it lacks is when we transition into, you know, how does it look on a tablet for our end user? So some GIS-based asset view. So looking at a map, okay, and especially in mining, we have a pit somewhere, and then we can have kilometers of haul road or conveyor systems, rail, ports, and it just makes more sense to see it on a map often than see it on an asset structure. I've mentioned conveyor and roads. linear assets. That's also very common in mining operation, complex mining operation. Okay, we'll be able to see it in the demo, but I can really go on a map. I can click on a segment of a conveyor and then create the work order from my map. Then I want to talk about vendor collaboration because out of all the industries that I've worked with, I would say mining is one that would have some of the highest proportion of outsourced work orders. So work orders that are fulfilled by third-party vendors. Okay? And often maintenance planner are kind of treating those vendors as oh, they don't need to complete work orders, they don't need to be in the system, but if you give them the right tools, okay, they can be responsible for completing work orders, uploading attachment, pictures, and then we get really everything in one system. Those work orders are not treated differently. So now let's talk maybe a little bit more about execution, still in the theme of operational visibility. Okay? But what's important is really cross-site visibility. And this is where I find traditional ERP or a heavyweight system fails. Okay? They tend to put everything in silos. Okay? So let's say our port operation or railroad operation are going to be in one silo, one box, and then our pit operation in another one. And then it becomes very challenging for leadership to diagnose more complex issue and more structural issues, which is something we'll be able to see shortly. Okay, so how can we have visibility across all of our different functions? Offline mobile app. Okay. So of course, mines are often in remote sites where connectivity could be not great. So it's important that we have a system that can essentially download the work task for the day. Okay. And then no need for connectivity. We can access all of our documentation. We can uh, we can put some notes, some parts consumption, and then when we get back on connectivity on Wi-Fi, everything can upload. We can do the same with sensors and Internet of Things. Okay, so it's not because we don't have connectivity that we can't track such information on asset. Think of temperature, think of meter hours, think of vibration. So there's solutions in place that we can put so that we can capture that data, even if you're in challenging and rugged environment. Then last but not least, cost and inventory visibility. It's important that we empower our technician to get that information at the tip of their hand. Which brings us to kind of our solution here, which is really designed for adoption, not designed for the consultant that implement that or the controller that will be monitoring the cost. Okay. And these are just a few example that I'll be able to show, but easy and dispatch scheduling. Okay. So often systems are very good at creating work orders, okay, whether preventive or corrective, but really on the planner or on our shift supervisor becomes challenging to dispatch. Okay? Lots of clicks, so we try to avoid that, and this really increase user adoption. Automated workflows, okay? Kind of a circumventing adoption here, but if there's things we can automate that we don't have to put the burden on the user, then we'll do that. Okay, that's kind of the best way around adoption issue is to just automate non-value added activity. And then my last point here, and I want to keep this practical. I think everyone is pushing the whole AI preach now, but what's important is that we have an AI that's tailored for maintenance, okay? Not just some generic large language model, okay? So we'll be able to see it practically in action. I have some good scenarios prepared for you in our demonstration. We're getting there. Okay. I think we have a few more slides, okay, before getting into the system. But ultimately, I think this is kind of a good side-by-side comparison, okay, between our system, Tag Mobi, and those traditional heavyweight ERP system. Okay. I promise I wouldn't name any of them, but I think a lot of you can relate to the left box, unfortunately. But I've seen it, on site, transaction codes on clipboards or even on post-it notes. Okay, so you need to remember like a code that's a Z32 to open your asset list. Makes no sense. Okay, training takes weeks because of that. You need to go menus deep and menus deep to find what you need. Okay, no offline. So then we have a paper workaround that someone needs to fill in into the system. And if you look at the right, we're kind of doing all the opposite. Okay. So mobile first, drag and drop, onboarding in hours, some voice commands. Okay. Of course, depending on the environment. But I think this is a good night and day comparison. So we'll get into the demo after this one. I just wanted to share some real world results. Okay. So these are clients that I've implemented. Okay. On the left, we have a mine in the Philippines. Okay. So 2,000 users. Essentially, they've reached increased visibility on asset lifecycle, the cost from acquisition to decommissioning. So that was really important for them. Essentially, enabling them on answering the age-old question on are we buying something else or are we investing more into keeping this asset up and running? When we're dealing with such large user deployment, okay, what we do is we often do a pilot. We kind of learn the recipe, and then from there we scale that. Okay, so it went from 50 to 2,000 users, I think for 40x, if my math is right. Okay, so this is often the preferred approach. Okay? Similar on the right, yeah, I don't want to be too redundant. Okay, a little bit smaller in scale, but really eliminated paper-based maintenance across 20 installation. Okay, and connecting essentially maintenance requirements directly to the operation, getting the parts they have in stock. All right, I've been promising it for a few minutes now, so let me share my screen. All right, I'll just move this. Perfect. So we are now in tag Mobi. Okay. I'm demonstrating today on a desktop, okay, from the comfort of my office, but this is a web application, which means that it can render on any device. Okay, so often I would say most of the users would really be using handheld devices, tablets, okay, or phones, and all of the layout and look and feel will essentially remain the same, which what we see often is users appreciate that flexibility. Okay, let's say in the pit they would be on tablets, but then when they go back in the office, they can go on a desktop or a laptop, and everything looks the same and feels consistent. What I'm showing now is really our asset menu. Okay. And I think this is a good testament to having some cross-site visibility. Okay. So if we, let's say, take our fleet over here, I can expand my asset structure, and here I'll really have my mining equipment, okay, from bucket loaders to haul trucks. Okay? But in that case here, I'm also maintaining some roads, okay, some hauling roads. So a similar concept. My roads can have structures where I'll have some cattle guards, some bridges, maybe, okay, and we'll also be able to see them on a map. I can also have some port terminal operation. Okay, so a lot of mines also have shipping ports, so here we can see different wide range of asset that we can also maintain in TagMobi, okay, which could be generators to crane system to water pumps. If we take a look at our bucket loader here, okay, okay, here I'm kind of a few clicks away from all the information that I need, so I can have some generic information that could be some in-house description or some PNIDs or some manufacturer information. But we can also see we have 11 finished work order, our maintenance history here. So if I'm wondering what was the last work orders, I can go here. I can have a list of parts, a list of preventive maintenance, and this is something that is very intuitive. Okay, If there's no information, you don't need, I know immediately that there's no feedback on this bucket loader. Other traditional heavyweight system, you kind of need to go in every single menu one by one to know even if there's data behind it. So we're solving that. Over here. We've mentioned a bit of AI at I think the previous slide. Okay, so let's go on our bucket loader. Okay, and you see here I have what we call Mobi Mentor at the bottom right. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just create a new chat, and here we can ask what were the last work orders. So essentially, this model is trained specifically on our data set, okay, and the process of how Mobi operates, okay? And it's very context aware. You see here how I did not need to specify them that were on the bucket loader number one. It understood on my screen, okay, that I was there. Okay, so same thing would have been if I'm on a work order, I could have asked question, don't need to specify a work order number. It knows where the user is. Okay? Another thing too here, I'm being very transparent for this webinar. Okay, I'm displaying all of the command that this AI is doing. You see, it made some mistakes, no big deal. Okay, corrected itself on its own, and ultimately, it's going to bring up some of the work orders, some of the finished work orders. Well, essentially those 10 last work orders we've had on this bucket loader. Okay. And I could make this in full screen, but I kind of like having it side by side. Okay, this way it's really kind of my companion on the right, and I can still operate the system. And you see here, it found the last work orders. It's also giving us a bit of his opinion, okay, on things that's standing out. So you see here, we've had a lot of hydraulic pump failures. PM services are up to date. This is great. Okay. And here we can even ask him, well, let's do something about this pump failure. Maybe create a preventive maintenance plan uh, for So I'm kind of throwing a fastball at him. Okay. I want him to help me create a preventive maintenance to kind of help with this hydraulic pump failures. Okay. That's going to take him a few minutes. So I suggest we just move on to some of the other functionality while this is going. Okay. What we can do in the meantime is we can go on our lines and linear asset. Okay. So here I should have a road. I think I have this road 87. Okay. And of course, let's let's push him a little bit on the side, okay, in the meantime. But remember on some of the functionalities that we've had, okay? Uh, Something that was important was really GIS-based or map-based system. So here I am working on this road 87, okay? And from here I can see my segment, okay? And I can see even some specific assets, okay? So let's say I click on the specific segment. I can create a work order from here. Okay. The alternative would have been to go into our asset structure, which would be quite challenging, especially for a maintenance technician. All they care about is creating the right work order, so they can do it from here. They could hit create work order. They could select the asset, just input a description, okay, and create that work order right away. Let's go back to our dear Mobi mentor here. Okay. So it's telling us it's pulled some of the asset detail for our bucket loader. Okay. And it pre-suggested some things for us. Okay. So let's say an hydraulic pump, PM meter. Okay. Said that this is a preventive maintenance type. Define some triggers for us. So every 3 months or 250 hours, and some tasks as well that is suggesting. Okay, so here we have about 5 or 6 tasks on how we should do that. Okay. From here, I could modify immediately from the chat. Okay, I could add a line if I wanted to. I could change my interval and ultimately create the PM plan. Okay. Now, enough about AI. I warned myself at the beginning, I don't want this to be an AI preach. Okay, we'll keep it practical, but hopefully this generate lots of interest. Okay, if you want to dive more into details with that, we'll have another call to action at the end. One more thing I wanted to show was devices. Okay, so what I have here is our Deer bucket loader. Okay, we see that the status is running. Okay, and we can have some real-time data that's coming out of my bucket loader over here. Okay, so here's just an example, but I'm capturing some pressure, temperature, vibration. Okay, and there's lots of complexity we can configure and rules behind the scene, but I'll try to keep this a little bit more light. Okay. Here, every time I get a temperature warning above 70 degrees, it will generate a warning or an alert. And out of these alerts, okay, we can generate some automation. Okay, so remember on my adoption slide, I said that everything we can automate, some non-value activity, we'll do it. Okay, so here, depending on my level on warning, it could just be maybe an alert, an SMS alert, okay, or a Teams chat alert. And when it's critical, maybe it could create a work order automatically for us. Okay. So kind of saving this manual step from a technician, we'll try to cut this at the source. I'm just looking at time. I think I can squeeze in one more feature for you guys, and then we'll come back to our data set, okay, which was about planning. Okay. So if I go back here and I go to dispatch, whoop, just close that. So what we see here would be essentially all of my workforce. I could divide that into shift, into trades if we need to. But really, what's the key to understand here is on the left, we have resources. In the middle, we have a calendar. And on the right, we have work orders. And all I really have to do is drag and drop to assign work orders. And so let's say I take this work order over here. Okay, all I have to do is drag and drop, and this is scheduled Tuesday for myself. Okay. Some other planning tools we can have could be Kanban boards. Okay. Very popular in manufacturing. I find that the mining industry can learn a few tricks from manufacturing here. Okay. So we can organize or group work orders by statuses. Okay. I should have put my new column on the left here. Apologies for that. But essentially here you can really organize your work orders, drag and drop them from one status to another, or you can group them by technician. So kind of get just an idea of the workload, who has the most assigned work orders. You can easily reassign if there's some shift change or anything like that. Very useful to facilitate, maintenance meeting, let's say daily maintenance huddles. I think we're running out of time. Okay. Sorry, I had fun going left and right in the system, but let's go back to our slide deck now. So here, if we take a look in practice how this looks like, okay, kind of still in the theme of comparing the traditional heavyweight systems, okay, um, on an assumption of 300 users. Keep in mind this is assumption, but just to get you an idea of the opportunity here, okay. Um, TagMobi is based off of a Microsoft stack. Okay, so it's still, a big tech giant, but we really provide this nuance and this expertise, this point expertise into user adoption, technician, asset management, and we come down for about a 300 user deployment, 30% cheaper on average. Okay. So this means that you still get all of the tech stack that would still, everyone gets what they need, right? CFOs and CIOs are on a trusted platform. Odds are, okay, even if you're running a traditional heavyweight system, there would still be some Microsoft solution and licenses. There's still some Microsoft ecosystem. So that's kind of our foot in the door often. Okay. And if I bring your attention at the top right, okay, one avoided unplanned failure can offset the cost of a multi-site, not one site, multi-site tag Mobi deployment. Okay, it's kind of the easiest system to justify an ROI when bringing this to management. Okay, enterprise asset management system have a lot of value. Okay, let's move on. So, where to start and how to know if it's working. Okay, I'll try to be brief here, but essentially, I have kind of those three steps: evaluate, execute, and measure. Okay, so first, really reflect on yourself. Okay, assess the gaps that you have in your systems compared to what you've seen today. It could be some of the IoT automation, the alerts. It could be some of the AI. It could be just how it looks. Are your technicians using it? Okay. Then execute, okay? We can quickly get into a trial. We don't have to scope, a year-long deployment. We can get it in your hands, and most importantly, in the hands of some of your users quickly, trying to get some feedback, see if this could be a good fit. And then last but not least, measure, okay? So we have some KPIs we can track, mean time between breakdowns, failures, work order completion, compliance rate, you name it. Okay, we've been doing this for a while, but in brief, really evaluate, execute, and ultimately measure. So some key takeaways before we move on to Q&A. Okay, if there's really a lesson to be learned today is that when visibility breaks down, okay, visibility breaks down when systems are disconnected. Okay, it could be we have different systems throughout our operation. It could be people that do the work orders are not using the system or they don't know how to use it. Okay. Which brings me to adoption. Okay. No adoption, no return on investment. And then ultimately, the maintenance activity should be able to drive both the operational and the financial insight. Okay. We can marry these together, believe it or not. I've done it before. Okay. And ultimately, that yields to better business decision. All right, William. So I believe that brings us to some of the question and answers we had for today.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation, Ben. I thought maybe we'll start with a quite a general question, but mining is an industry where the unexpected happens, can be expected. Um, I was wondering how flexible your system will be to adapt to rapid changes in workflow and also potentially how it could help miners as they expand downstream and along the value chain.
Yeah, absolutely, William. It's very um, horizontally integrated industry, and what's important is that the systems you put in place, okay, can scale and can grow. So within Tag itself, it's a very modular system. So a lot of what I've shown today, like AI and IoT and planning, could be add-ons, so to speak. So you don't have to take everything in one go. You can scale, but also throughout the value chain, Microsoft is really good at providing open APIs and connectors. So if there's, let's say, a fleet management system we want to integrate with, or it's a distribution system, it's totally doable.
Thank you. And then a more detailed question. Could you maybe explain to us a bit the difference between CMMS and EAM systems and ERP systems?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Okay, so CMMS would be kind of our entry level, so to speak, work order management system. Think of it as a work order generating machine, okay, whether it's PM or CM, and then we have users completing those work orders. But what really differentiates, makes the difference between CMMS and EAM is all of the asset management capabilities from acquisition to decommissioning, okay? So really getting from vendor, really getting our total cost of ownership, we won't be able to get that just with a CMMS system. And then I believe you mentioned ERP as well. So ERP, enterprise resource planning, bit of an older term, but this is really where we connect all of the different pieces of the business from a finance point of view. Okay, so getting the cost on our work orders to populate our financial statements.
Thank you. And then for your clients who may already have existing Internet of Things systems set up from their equipment providers. I was wondering about your ability to integrate with those pre-existing systems.
Yeah. So really, the trend here, we need to make sure that those systems have an open API, okay, that we can essentially connect to the data. I would say most of the systems I've worked with, especially in mining, would be able to support that. And on that, William, and I think there's going to be a lot of people here that will be able to relate. All of the OEM equipment manufacturer would have such capabilities, but they want you to log on their portal. Okay, so you'll have a portal for Komatsu, you'll have another portal for your conveyor systems, and then ultimately you have 25 portals you need to log into to manage your work orders and alerts. And this is really why we want to take take the alerts that these generate and then feed it into an EAM system, so you have a one-stop shop to manage all of these alerts coming in.
Mm. Now, the benefits of the system to the operators, I think you've made a very good case for. I'm also interested in what your system could offer to investors, JV partners, debt holders, people who have an interest in the process at the mine without maybe being operators themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So often what we tailor for those users or third party auditors, investors, like you said, William, is we can provide them with reports, okay, almost real-time reports, but they can get what I like is kind of real time, but you get monthly alerts or quarterly. So you could get a quarterly report on some key KPIs, but if they want, the data is still available for them. They can drill down, they can make a bit of their own research if they want to. So, everyone gets what they need, operators on handheld device in the middle of a pit, and then investors can get the insights they're looking for.
Mm. And I think for me, one of the most interesting things that you showed us in the demo was that chatbot. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the AI, what it's useful for now, what model you're using, and maybe a sense of what its capabilities could be.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it, William. And really here, I did show a chatbot, but there is much more to it. Okay. Chatbot are very reactive, like I needed to prompt it. Works great in the 10 minute demo we had, but to me, really the value between AI is doing things on its own. Okay. So rather than relying on a user to prompt it, like you remember our pump failure, we could have had an agent tell us, hey, I find 15 assets that are lacking some PMs that would actually help you improve. Can you review them? And then we're putting the burden on the AI to do the thinking and the user to validate and to tweak it. Okay. Um, Mention models quickly. We're model agnostic. Okay, so a lot of organization could be tied to some AI providers, so we can adapt to that, which I think is something we're really proud of.
Thank you. Now, I think that's all the time we've got now. But so I'm going to say thank you for that presentation, and then I'll leave it to you just to give the call to action that we can see on the screen here.
Yeah, thank you, William. So if you have any questions, wondering how to get started, just curious, just want to have a chat, there's my QR code to my calendar and our marketing team here. So go ahead and hopefully I get to talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, William.